My name is Evan. I maintain the ventilation system of the Westfield Grand Mall. People think malls sleep at night. They don't. They breathe. When the gates roll down and the lights cut to half power, the whole building changes. The music stops, but the air never does. The vents run 24/7, humming like a heartbeat in the dark. I walk those upper maintenance catwalks alone, past empty food courts and silent escalators that still click for no reason. Last Tuesday, around 2:14 a.m., I heard something crawling inside the shafts. Slow, deliberate, metal ticking under weight that shouldn't have been there. I thought it was a raccoon at first. We get those sometimes. I leaned in listening, and then it spoke. Not words at first, just breathe shaping sound, until it formed a voice I recognized. Maria's voice. And Maria had been missing for 2 days. Night shift at Westfield Grand Mall feels like a private America the daytime never sees. The Apple store goes black except for a single glowing bitten apple on the wall, AMC's poster lightboxes hum to themselves, and the food court sleeps under chairs flipped upside down like shields. Out in the parking structure, sodium lamps paint everything the color of weak tea. Somewhere, an ice machine coughs. If you listen long enough, you start hearing patterns inside the noise like a lullaby played through a fan. I took this shift because it pays better and because the ducts never ask how you're doing. I clock in at 10:46 p.m., swipe a badge that sticks half a second too long, and pass the security office where the TV is always tuned to a late ball game with the sound off. The vending machines in the break room blink their little LED eyes, trail mix, honey buns, off-brand soda with patriotic labels. I pour stale coffee from a pot labeled Cliff in Sharpie, even though he pretends he doesn't care. Night shift here is quiet. Too quiet. You learn to love the hum of air handlers, the click of relays, the steady whoosh of conditioned air. It's like listening to the building breathe. Cliff always said malls are like living animals. Keep its lungs clean, he'd laugh, tapping the metal ducts. Maria used to handle the upper shafts. She hasn't shown up for 2 days. They say she quit. I keep hearing footsteps up there. Cliff is the kind of old-timer who still keeps a Zippo and Marlboros in a shirt pocket with a pen that leaks. He'll run a finger across a return grill, check the gray stripe of dust like a doctor reading an X-ray, and grunt, satisfied or not. When he's not talking about dampers or belts, he's telling me how this used to be a field before it was a mall, and before that a marsh that steamed in the summer. Air remembers, he likes to say. Holds heat, holds cold, holds voices longer than you think. Then he kills the Zippo with a click and reminds me not to smoke near the filters. Maria was the opposite, young, fast, hair tied back, boots loud on the ladder rungs. She'd whistle ranchera songs that made the ductwork sound less like a throat and more like a tunnel to somewhere warm. Upper shafts were her territory above the movie theater, over the Apple store, across that narrow catwalk that always smells like lemon cleaner and old popcorn. 2 days ago she didn't text. Yesterday her locker was open, baseball cap hanging from a hook like a period at the end of a sentence. This morning, HR taped up a notice, position posted. That's how fast malls move. You could vanish between lunch rushes and happy hour. Out on the roof, the units keep their own weather. Fans like silver turbines, belts whining, damp night air blowing across condenser fins. I check the bias terminal building automation, waking it up with the password Cliff wrote on masking tape under the keyboard, a veteran's birth date, and the word lung. The trend lines should be boring. That's the point. Tonight, they aren't. Between 2:12 and 2:19 a.m., CO2 spikes over the food court, then drops like shame. A supply fan in AHU3 ramps and stalls twice. VAV boxes above the Apple store show occupied when no one's scheduled. And in the corner of the screen, a little bell icon blinks for a manual override I didn't make. I grab my bag, flashlight, and a coil of tie wire. Walking the back corridors, you learn the mall's family photos scuff drywall, old mall maps with a carousel that isn't there anymore, a mural of a smiling kid with an ice cream that's been painted over 3 times but still bleeds through. Somewhere in the distance, a janitor's floor machine whines, then stops. I radio security, get static. Then a voice I don't recognize saying copy, in a tone that doesn't quite fit inside human. The radio goes quiet in a way that eats the silence around it. At the food court, I stand under the big return plenum that always smells like fry oil, orange chicken, and pennies. The grill sighs against my palm. Not warm, not cold active. From the shaft above comes a sound too light to be a raccoon, too deliberate to be wind. 3 taps. A slide. Then the faint scrape of weight moving from ring to ring, hand over hand, like someone who knows ladders but doesn't love them. I shine the light up. Dust floats back like fake snow from a mall Santa's set. The beam paints a slice of galvanized steel, an elbow joint, a service hatch Maria always kicked with her heel when it stuck. There's a smear near the latch. Could be grease. Could be something darker spread thin by a glove. I tell myself to log it and move on. But the night makes you bargain. The night shift makes you narrate the world into shapes you can stand. On my way to the Apple Store mezzanine, I pass the AMC. Even closed, it leaks the smell of butter and carpet. Movie posters glow like aquariums. Someone has scrawled "See you soon" in dry erase on the staff door. Above me, a branch of duct jogs left, then CL. There are parts of the mall no customer has ever seen. Narrow steel catwalks strung above ceiling tiles, maintenance corridors barely wide enough for 2 shoulders to pass, places where dust settles thick like felt and the air tastes recycled 10 times over. That's where I spend most of my shift. Up where the building's bones show. The first real sign something was wrong came 3 nights after Maria vanished. I was working in AHU3's service bay, tightening a flange bolt on a vibrating flex joint. Just routine. The kind of task you can do while thinking about groceries or gas prices or nothing at all. That's when I heard it. A voice. Not close but not far. Inside the duct. I was tightening a flange bolt when I heard it. A voice echoing through the shaft. Ivan, drawn out. Wet. Like vocal cords dragged across metal. I froze. Then I recognized it. It was Maria's voice, but stretched. Wrong. Like something was trying to sound human and almost getting it. I sat there for a full minute, wrench still in my hand, staring at the return grill like it might open its teeth and speak again. The duct hummed. The air moved. But nothing else. I told myself it was the building. Airflow resonance can do weird things. It can bend sound into something like speech. That's what I decided to believe, until the smell came. Most ducts smell like dust, sheet metal, and whatever the tenants are cooking below. But this was damp, sour, a rot that tasted like old blood and humidity trapped too long in a warm place. It drifted down from the upper runs, the ones Maria used to clean. I logged it. Odor irregularity in upper shaft B7. Cliff grunted and said we'd hit it next week. We never did. Security buzzed me an hour later. Hey, you might want to look at this. The guard's voice was too casual, like someone trying very hard not to sound shaken. The camera feed showed the Apple Store atrium from above. A view only maintenance and mall ops can access. On the screen, a shadow stretched across the ceiling. Long, too long. Limbs bent not wrong but unfamiliar, like whoever or whatever it was had learned to move in the tight geometry of ducts and trusses instead of open floor. It crawled, not walked. Hand, foot, elbows and toes. Fast. Then it stopped directly above the genius bar and stilled completely, like an animal flattening into brush when it hears a hunter. There was no audio, but I swear I could feel it listening. Probably a raccoon, the guard muttered. Raccoons don't have arms that long. They don't stop like they're thinking. They don't press their heads against vent grills like they're smelling you. I told Cliff. He didn't look surprised. He just sucked on a Marlboro like he needed it to stay connected to the world. You hear voices, you ignore them, he said. Sound travels in ducts, picks up pieces of people. Echoes stick around. But Maria's voice, I asked. Cliff didn't look at me. Air remembers, he said again. I didn't like that answer. That night, the radios went strange. Normally, we radio short instructions. Pressure readings. Filter replacements. But around 3:18 a.m., I heard something breathing into my channel. Slow, damp, a sound that had weight like something was close to the mic. I whispered Cliff. The breathing stopped, and then something whispered my voice back to me. Not words, just tone. The shape of my voice. Like someone tracing the outline of my throat from memory. I dropped the radio. From that moment on, I couldn't pretend anymore. The mall wasn't just breathing. It was learning. Cliff didn't give me the rules all at once. He didn't write them down for new hires, didn't explain them on day one. He waited until the mall felt wrong to me too. Until I had already heard the voice. That's when he knew I wouldn't laugh. It was around 2:30 a.m. We were in the sub-level mechanical corridor, the one that runs behind the food court freezers, and the old boiler room that no one uses anymore. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, that tired buzzing sound that feels like it's right behind your eyes. I was checking a damper motor, still pretending everything was normal. Cliff just stood there quietly, watching me work, taking a slow drag off his cigarette, even though no one's supposed to smoke down there. Then he said, "You're hearing it, aren't you?" He didn't look at me. He exhaled toward the floor, toward the condensation pooling on the concrete. I didn't answer. But I didn't have to. Cliff nodded to himself, flicked ash off the end of his cigarette, and reached into the inside pocket of his faded work jacket. He pulled out a plastic tag, yellowed, edges warped, laminated once but peeling at the seam. A field safety tag, the kind used for labeling shut-off valves or lockout switches. He handed it to me. On one side was a faded diagram of the mall ventilation system. On the other side, 4 rules printed in black marker, now brown with age 1. If you hear someone in the vents, you didn't 2. If it calls your name, don't answer 3. If you see eyes, close the grate 4. If you smell copper, run. That ain't rust. I stared at the card. Cliff finally met my eyes. These aren't superstitions. I learned M because the men before me didn't. Then he told me the things I needed to know if I wanted to stay alive inside the mall's lungs. Rule #1, never talk back to the voices. Air carries sound in strange ways. But what I heard wasn't just resonance. The second time it spoke, I was tightening a flange bolt on a vibrating joint above the AMC theater. The ventilation shaft around me pulsed softly with the movement of conditioned air. The steel was warm. I could feel the mall breathing through it. That's when the whisper came again. Not just a voice, not just sound. It knew my name, and it had improved since the last time. The vowels were shaped better this time. The rhythm closer to human speech. Like a child practicing a phrase over and over. My mouth opened without permission. The urge to say yeah came from somewhere deep, somewhere ancient in the brain that responds to being called. But Cliff's voice cut through the panic like cold water. You talk, you teach it. I clenched my jaw. The voice in the duct tried again, slower, matching the pattern of my breathing. Eva, not Maria, not anything human. Something trying to be. I stayed silent. The whisper faltered like a tape slowing and then retreated, leaving only the steady hum of airflow. That was when I understood what Cliff meant. It wasn't copying words. It was learning me. Rule #2, always shut the inspection grate behind you. The mall ducts are a maze. Some are large enough to crawl through. Some are barely big enough to slide your shoulders past. The grates are the only boundary between you space and its space. We were servicing the vents above the Apple store when it happened. I stepped through an access hatch and onto a narrow service platform. Aluminum groaned under my boots. I was halfway to the next junction when I felt a shift in pressure behind me, a breath of warmer air, something moving. The inspection grate behind me was still open. A shadow spilled into the opening like it was pouring instead of stepping. I slammed the grate shut. The metal rang like a struck bell. And immediately something pressed against the other side. Not clawing, not banging, just leaning, like it was listening through the steel. The grate bowed inward by half an inch. Then the pressures disappeared. Cliff told me later open grates are invitations. Close M, and it remembers the house has a door. Rule #3, if you find abandoned clothing in the shaft, leave it. This one didn't make sense to me at first. Then I found the hoodie. It was draped over a support strut above the food court ventilation run. Gray, worn thin at the elbows, stained with something brown that had soaked and dried in uneven patches. The hood was bunched like someone had grabbed it hard yanked. The size, the color, everything matched Maria's. The air around it smelled wrong. Wet fabric and coppery sweetness like raw meat, warmed by breath. I reached toward it without thinking. Then I froze. Something about the placement was too careful, too arranged, and on the floor of the duct just beneath it were screws collected and stacked in a tight circle, like a nest, or a mouth. That meant hands, something with fine control. Something that set bait. I backed away, didn't touch a thing. The next night the hoodie was gone, but the circle of screws was larger. Rule #4: never check the upper central air return after midnight. The mall breathes hardest after midnight. All that stale air from the day gets pulled into the central return, one massive chamber where every sound becomes amplified. Cliff said that's where it listens. So, of course, one night I had to go there. The BS terminal showed a sudden pressure drop in the upper return at 12:17 a.m. I could have lied in the log. Could have said the reading was faulty. But I wanted to know. The air got colder the higher I climbed. The duct walls condensed moisture that slid like sweat. The return chamber was huge, bigger than I expected, tall enough to stand in. A steel cathedral of stale air. At first, I thought I was alone. Then I heard it breathing. Not behind me. Not ahead. Above. I raised my headlamp. Two eyes reflected back, low to the duct floor, set just slightly too far apart. The creature blinked. Not like a human, not like an animal. It blinked in sync with my breathing. Inhale, right arrow blink. Exhale, right arrow blink. It was mirroring me, learning the rhythm of my lungs. Then it spoke. But it didn't use Maria's voice this time. It used mine. Perfect. Not just sound. Not just tone. It copied the weight of my breath. The hesitation at the end of the word. The tremor in my fear. Evan. I didn't say anything. I closed the grate, and the metal behind it pushed outward, once testing the boundary. Not attacking. Just learning. Curious. Curious is worse. Curious means it isn't finished. I was halfway down the service corridor when Cliff turned on me with the look people get when they've decided something that can't be undone. He'd been pale for days ever since Maria stopped punching in, but tonight he was carved out of chalk. From somewhere in the return duct above us came a sound like a wet hand dragging over grill mesh. "Did you hear that?" he asked. I heard Maria before I could answer. It was a small noise at first, like somebody breathing into a paper bag, then words, fragile as moth wings. "Cliff, I'm stuck. Please." He stepped under the square of black vent and cupped his hands. "Maria!" "Where don't?" I said too late. Rule 1. Never talk back. The change was instant. The voice on the other side corrected itself, tuning like a radio dial catching a station. It lost the tremble and found her cadence, the soft San Antonio lilt I'd heard on long nights in the boiler room when she made fun of my coffee. "Cliff, I can't feel my legs. It hurts." He looked at me like I'd caused it. Then he hauled a 6-foot ladder off the wall and planted it under the return. Marlboro smoke hung around him in a tired halo. "I'll get her out," he said. "Cliff." After midnight, he kicked the ladder feet open until they snapped and didn't look at me again. "You want to write the report to her mother." The return grill was the size of a card table. It led to the upper central air return, one of the main lines feeding the roof plenum. The place I had never seen with lights on because we never turned them on there. Not after midnight. I moved to hit the breaker for the north fans, the emergency override that would at least slow the pull. My finger hovered. If I killed the fans, the pressure would equalize, and whatever was in there wouldn't have to fight wind to move. "Don't do it," Cliff snapped, and then his wrench was on the screws. Metal screamed as threads gave. One corner fell. Cold air breathed against us, damp and sour, sweet under like fruit left in a hot car. And beneath it, a copper tang that hit the soft part behind my teeth. Cliff flung the grill aside and stuck his head into the square of night. "Maria, talk to me." For a beat there was nothing. Then fingers ran across the inside edge of the opening, too many joints, too slow, and withdrew again like a spider reconsidering a leap. I tasted bile. "Cliff," I said, and I don't know if I sounded like I was praying. "Step down." She cried then. Or the thing did. It was beautiful and broken at once, as if somebody had taught a whale to sing through a harmonica. It ricocheted along the ductwork and came back in layers. "Don't leave me." The ladder rattled as he hauled himself through. His boots vanished with a scrape. The flashlight beam swung once, painting dull galvanized ribs, and then it was gone. "Cliff." I climbed 2 rungs uselessly. The opening breathed on my face. The overhead sodiums clicked and went dark. For a second the corridor dissolved. Emergency strobes popped to life, slow and red. In that stuttering light the square of return looked like a wound. I grabbed the radio. "Control, this is Evan, maintenance. Be advised, we have an unauthorized entry into the upper central return. I need camera eyes now." Static. Then the same voice I'd been hearing for years from a board guard named Sean. "Copy, Evan. I'm pulling feeds. Hold." A pause. Getting movement in the central trellis. Big movement. Define big. A longer pause. Like long. "It's on the ceiling moving toward my god. Put it on my tablet." I slung the maintenance pack open and yanked the battered tablet free, fingers slipping. A second later the camera came up, a grainy fisheye of the food court at night, chairs perched upside down on tables like skeletal birds. Something crawled across the far ceiling, where the acoustic tiles met the duct run an ink blot, with too many elbows. It was moving faster than it had any right to, and the red strobes made it look like it appeared 3 feet ahead of itself each frame. It was heading toward the central spine, the main vertical riser that connected to the upper return where Cliff had gone. "Cliff, do you copy?" I asked the radio. But I heard myself already in my head saying his name, and hated the way the ducks answered when they thought they were being spoken to. No reply. Then, far away inside the metal, a single thump like a fist against a locker. I hit the ladder again, shoved my head into the square, and was swallowed by cold. The duct swallowed sound too. The world above the ceiling was all sheet metal and old dust, a geometry that felt older than the mall itself. My flashlight made a tube of brightness that showed me scuffed galvanization, boot prints. An abandoned glove turned thumb up like it was agreeing with a bad idea. The smell crawled around the beam, wet concrete, mildew, and that bright metallic tang again, heavier, as if a battery had burst in the air. I crawled because that's what my body did when my brain couldn't do anything else. My tool belt rattled against the ribs. Somewhere ahead, metal flexed under weight. "Evan," the voice came from behind me. Cliff's voice. Close enough it should have breathed on my neck. "Help." I froze, then turned the light back toward the opening. Nothing but the ragged square and the slow red pulse beyond. When I turned forward again, the beam caught something that didn't belong, a strip of denim abrading along a seam, snagged on a sharp lip. It tore free with the soft whine of fabric surrendering. I heard Cliff scream. Just once. A short, surprised sound, cut off as if the duct itself had pinched shut around his throat. "Cliff!" I crawled harder, elbows chewing into flesh. The duct forked. The tag I'd painted last year, yellow arrow for safe crawl space, red X for inspection only, was still there. The red X pointed right, toward upper central. I went right. The light found claw marks on a curved elbow. No, not claws, too even. As if something with flat teeth had set in and pulled. The galvanization was peeled like a sardine lid. Beyond it, the metal bent inward, ribs dented from something bracing itself to get smaller. The scale of that strength went through me like fever. I reached across joint and stopped because the grate ahead was closed. That was wrong. We always left inspection grates open when someone was inside. Rule 2: always shut the inspection grate behind you. The thing hated big spaces and light. Somebody had pulled this one shut. It meant the space beyond was darker. I checked the latch with shaking fingers. It was hooked from the other side. On. The voice was to my left now, to my right, echoing on itself. Maria, then Cliff, then Maria again, like the thing was shuffling a deck between them, practicing. Over here. My flashlight hit a rivulet of something that had run along a seam and then dried. Not rust. It had dried in scallops that caught the light, translucent red-brown like varnish. The smell of pennies climbed straight into my sinuses. I swallowed until my ears popped. I backed up to the junction box at my hip and tore it open. There was an old line I'd tied in years ago as a joke. A bare incandescent bulb on 10 feet of cord. We called the interrogation light. I screwed the bulb into the socket with my thumb and fired it up. Warm yellow bit into the cold. The thing in the duct did not like it. I knew because every surface around me ticked and creaked like muscles clenching. "Cliff," I said, keeping my eyes on the grate, "if you're in there, kick twice." 2 slow knocks came from ahead. Relief hit me so hard my vision snowed out. Then the knocks repeated, not quite the same, too quick, as if it had learned the pattern and was eager to show me. 3, 4. A childish little rattle that said, "Look what I can do." I killed the bulb. The air pressure shifted. Somewhere far down the line a fan spooled up with a lazy whine, a beast taking a breath after a nap. The current pulled hair along my arms toward the grate. The emergency panel must have reset and brought on a different circuit. If the suction got higher, I'd be pinned. I unhooked my wrench and hammered the grate hook. The vibration traveled out and came back in a skin-crawling shimmer. On the third hit, the hook bent. The grate swung inward like a mouth opening. The chamber beyond was a plenum, a big open box, where several returns met and turned upward. A place it wouldn't like. A place I might be able to make it leave, if I gave it something to hate. I slid through and dropped into the plenum, boots splashing in a thin film that wasn't water. The smell was sweet spoiled now, like a florist's dumpster in July. My light found abandoned clothing in a careful pile, a maintenance shirt with Cliff's stitched name, a bundle of gray mall uniforms, a set of sneakers with the laces tied together like somebody planned to carry them over a shoulder. Rule 3: if you find abandoned clothing in the shaft, leave it. Trophies. Sheds. Something moved in the high corner where the sheet metal made a triangle too small for a person. It moved like a shadow was learning to use elbows. 2 reflections blinked and vanished. Eyes, I thought. Then I remembered the rule: if you see eyes, close the grate. My hand reached back, patting for the gate door, but it was a good 4 feet away and the suction was rising. Behind me, from the way I'd come, Cliff's voice arrived again. "Evan, help." I said nothing. My mouth filled with copper, my tongue turning to foil. I fumbled the service panel open on the plenum wall. My thumb found the toggles by field damper light, aux fan. I hit light and a flood of white roared on, from a bank of industrial fluorescence I didn't know still worked. The thing made a sound like a film reel melting in a projector. It came down the wall too fast to track accordion body, wrong joints, a tidal shift, but it didn't come into the full light. It pressed itself into the seam, trying to become flat enough to slide into the tiny shadow line. The skin, or what passed for it, changed color where light hit, from wet asphalt to raw pearl, then back again. "Maria," it said, soft as cotton. The voice cracked. It tried again. "Maria." It was practicing. I threw the damper toggle. Metal plates inside the channel started to swing. Somewhere a fan choked, the air pull dipping. The thing shivered like it was freezing. It slid, quick as thought, toward the darkest corner of the vertical riser up to the roof. "Come on," I said to the mall itself. I slapped aux fan and the motor above me stuttered and caught. The plenum became wind. Loose clothing lifted. The pile riffled and danced. The sneakers hopped. On the camera feeds, I imagined chairs skittering across tile. The thing didn't like that either. It made a sound I will hear on quiet nights until I die, like somebody smiling with their mouth open too wide, and then it went up the riser in a ripple. For a second its length unrolled across the corner like a tape measure. It was longer than the room. Then the corner was empty. My radio popped. "Evan." The voice was thin. Cliff strained. I wanted to answer. Rule 1 hung like a hook in my mouth. I swallowed words like pills. "If you can hear me, kick twice." 1 kick. Silence. Then my own voice answered from the dark grate behind me. Perfect down to the breathy hitch I hate. "When I'm tired, if you can hear me, kick twice." The light flickered. The aux fan hiccuped. Somewhere in the maze, breakers flipped back to their scripts. The building was tired of what I wanted. Its lungs were going to breathe the way they were built to. I moved. I put the grate back on its hinges because that's what we do, even when we're scared. We put the system back the way we found it, so it won't kill the next person. I hissed when a sharp edge took a slice from my palm. The blood smell sent the air into a new key. The ducks around me sighed. Evan close behind me now. Cliff's timbre, Maria's sorrow braided through it. Don't leave me. I killed the light again before it could see my eyes. I crawled until my shoulders ached and my knees were meat. I dropped into the service corridor like a diver breaking a surface. The red strobes painted the world in pulses. The ladder stood where I'd left it. The return grill dangled on one screw like a jaw. Down the hall, in the direction of the security office, a metal roll-down gate began to rattle against its tracks. Not a normal rattle, a pattern. 3 taps, a pause, 3 taps. It was learning Morse or inventing its own. The echo went on too long for one gate. Other gates were answering in the dark, tinny and distant, the mall teaching itself a new language one shutter at a time. I ran. The shafts shook above me. Scrape, scrape, a rush. A shadow kept speed with me under the ceiling, long as a bus, moving like it had 20 knees. I hit the stairwell and went up because down felt like a throat. On the second landing the smell of copper got stronger, threading through the concrete like steam. Control, I said into the radio, fighting for air, lock the upper return access on L3. Send units to my location. I need, Evan, my name came back on the radio in my voice, crushed by static. The real radio spit noise too, but underneath I could hear Sean swearing. The system was looping us, stitching us together. On L3 the door to the roof ladder stood open. The sign we'd put there years ago, no entry, after 12:00 a.m. hung by one zip tie, twitching in the draft. On the other side, the ladder rose into a shaft that felt colder than outdoors in January. I put my hand on the first rung. It was wet. Overhead something made a new sound. Not a scrape, not a voice. A patient smacking, like a tongue testing a new word. I stepped back and slammed the door, and dogged the bar with the heel of my hand until it screamed. The sound went out into the ducts, and came back multiplied. I stood there with my forehead against the metal, breathing, until the red strobes began to slow toward a normal pulse. The building, bored of its seizure, decided to sleep again. Down the hall, my tablet vibrated on its strap. I looked without wanting to. Camera 4, the AMC lobby showed carpet and neon, and a statue of a smiling popcorn tub with legs. A figure stood under it, back to the lens, long arms hanging, head tilted like a question. It wasn't looking at the camera. It was listening to the ceiling. Evan, it said, and the mic picked it up clean. Cliff first, then Maria, then me, layered like music. Help! I didn't answer. I turned the tablet face down and listened to the mall breathe. Behind me, from the vents over the stairwell, I heard a soft whisper that wasn't a voice yet, but would be soon, because it was learning. Even. I ran my bleeding hand under the janitor's sink until the water turned pink, then clear. The copper smell faded but didn't go. In the mirror over the sink my eyes looked like I'd been underwater too long. I thumbed the radio one last time. If anyone hears this, I said to the system, to the building, to whatever lived in its lungs now, do not talk back. The ducks hummed. Somewhere above me, something smiled. And behind my shoulder, close enough to fog the glass if it wanted, Cliff's voice said gently, "Good night, kid." But Cliff was already gone. I quit the very next morning. No meeting. No exit interview. No paperwork. I left my badge on the break room table, next to Cliff's coffee mug that still had a ring of dried brown around the rim. I didn't take my final paycheck. I didn't clear my locker. I just walked out through the north employee exit, while the mall was still asleep and the sun hadn't figured out how to get over the parking garage yet. The air outside tasted different. Wrong, but simple. Like I had forgotten what air felt like when it didn't belong to something else. I drove with the windows down until the wind hurt. 3 states. Then 4. Until the name Westfield Grand Mall sounded like something that had happened to someone else. I told myself distance meant safety. That whatever lived in those ducts couldn't follow me through open highways and empty farmland and chain motels built in the 70s. I rent rooms now. Quiet ones. The kind with faded carpets and televisions that only pick up 2 channels. The kind with air conditioners that rattle like they're choking on gravel. I choose places where the vents are small, where the return grills are the size of a postcard, where the ductwork couldn't fit a house cat. And I sleep with the box fan running in the window. No ducts, no central air, no metal lungs humming above me. Just wind, just wind. For a while that was enough. I'd wake up sometimes with my heart pounding, convinced I heard Cliff on the other side of the wall. Or Maria humming one of her stupid ranchera melodies off-key just to annoy me. But it was only the highway, only the ice machine, only the wind. I believed that. Until last night. It was 3:14 a.m. The kind of hour when even the road outside gives up making noise. I opened my eyes because the room was too still. Total stillness is not silence. It is the absence of breathing. The box fan had turned off. Not sputtered. Not slowed down. Just off. Like a hand had pressed the switch. I stayed still for a full minute, listening to my pulse in my teeth. Then came the wind. Not from the window. Not from outside. From inside the wall. Soft at first, like someone breathing through fabric. Then shaping itself. Not words. Not quite. Just the shape of my name, even slow. Patient. As if it had been practicing again. As if it had followed the sound of my lungs across state lines and county borders and discount motel rooms with stained ice buckets and buzzing fluorescent lights. As if it had found new ducts. New walls. New throats to crawl through. I didn't answer. Of course I didn't answer. You don't talk back. You don't feed it. You don't give it another vowel to learn. But I lay there with the blanket pulled up to my chin like a child, breathing too quietly, trying not to show it the rhythm. Because it learns the rhythm first. It always learns the rhythm first. This morning, I asked the front desk if they had any maintenance access behind the walls. The clerk didn't even look up from his phone. Old building, he said. Shared ventilation. Probably rats. Right, rats. Rats don't call your name. Rats don't match your breathing. Rats don't follow you across entire states. I leave tomorrow. Another town. Another motel, another box fan. But the thing about air is air travels. It doesn't stay where you leave it. It doesn't belong to any one building. It carries memory. It carries sound. It carries things that learn. And every night, when I turn on the fan and try to sleep, I'm never sure if I'm cooling the room or calling something back to me. I quit, packed my tools and left the state. I sleep in cheap motels now. No vents. No ducts. Just a box fan in the window. But last night the fan turned itself off, and from inside the wall something whispered my name. I didn't answer, but it knows I heard.